advertisers.
I love all my advertisers, and I'm not even going to say anything more about it. I just love all of our advertisers. It's that simple. But it's easy to advertise for SodaStick because they always have new products. It's really cool stuff. So check out sodastick.com. All right. I want both the insider and the fan view on the Karl Anthony Towns rumors. Do you think his reported disgruntlement, if that's a word, is overplayed, underplayed, or right on?
Well, I think that it was when it was sort of mentioned on podcasts and things and talked about, I think it was discussed in a fairly accurate way in terms of, look, Towns and Tibbs and Towns and Butler haven't been on the same page yet, and that's a process that may take longer, and it's not, by any means a lost cause, but there are issues to work through, and it needs to improve. Now, of course, when that kind of chatter hits the internet at large, it turns into 5-alarm fire, and all of a sudden there's a jump from, okay, here's this little part about them needing to get on the same page to Towns is going to demand a trade, and this whole thing is falling apart. And I can tell you that Karl Anthony Towns has not demanded a trade. The Timberwolves would not trade him and do not want to trade him. He's completely untouchable. And they're going to work on a max deal and a max offer, and they'll figure out a way to structure it. But everyone knows that that's the way that it's headed. So all of the kind of details really line up to something getting done eventually this summer. But yeah, whether it's in those negotiations when they sit down and talk, or after that gets done and Towns gets back from some travels around the world, and there does need to be sort of a meeting of the minds. There does need to be kind of a frank and real conversation about what he is seeing and feeling, what Tibbs is seeing, feeling, and how you kind of get the two that are a little bit farther apart and bring them together. If they don't, then the ceiling on the team lowers.
I just think he needs a new contract because the man can't even afford clothes. It's sad. It's sad to see a young professional who's making all this money for his league and he can't even dress himself.
I mean, but really, all that's airbrushed. I mean, I'd look the same way too if
there ain't enough air in the world, dude, or enough brushes.
If I had those wizards to help me out as well.
Now, what's your level of concern, Steve, about the Karl stuff?
None, because I'll tell you what, if Karl leaves this team, that is the end of the team. That I don't want to hear any BS. That if it's Tibbs, he's got to go. If it's Butler, he's got to. Everyone's got to go except for Cat. I mean, and I don't. This is just people text me like I actually have some say in the Timberwolves, which I clearly don't. But they're like, "Have you heard anything?" I'm like, "I've heard." Sorry, Brendan. I mean, literally, I'm just sitting like everyone else. But I'm just Cat is the future, and I like Jimmy, and I whatever. But this is not even a choice, and Cat is the most important player on this. And quite frankly, I think the sooner that Butler starts being nice to him and kind of brings him in as opposed to trying to keep him down because he wants to be the alpha, the further this team's going to go, the faster.
Well, and I mean, the one thing that is kind of complicating measures here in this thing is that Cat is very aware of his standing, and he is very confident in his abilities, but also understands kind of where his trajectory is headed. And I do think that he knows that if it did come down to it, if he had to push the button and say it's Tibbs or me, which again he has not done. As far as I know, he hasn't thought about it. But if it got to that point, he would win that war. That's just the way that it is. And so he has all the leverage in this situation. Now, it also is going to be important for Cat, though, to understand that even though he does have all of this leverage, that he'll have to make some compromises. He'll have to kind of meet Tibbs and Butler a little bit more toward the middle in terms of what they want out of him and how they want him to play defensively and pay attention to the scouting reports and all of those things. So it's not just going to be that Tibbs and Butler have to completely, defer to Towns, but both sides have to kind of come off of their stubbornness a little bit. But yeah, I mean, everyone in the league, everyone in the organization knows that if it ever got down to it, that's it. And so the jobs of everyone now going forward is to make sure it doesn't get to that point and find a way that everyone feels good about where they're at. And I mean, because the thing is, like, as frustrated as Jimmy can be with these guys, he needs them. Like, they're going nowhere if Towns doesn't continue his ascension, if Wiggins doesn't put things together a little bit better. And Jimmy wants to win. He keeps saying that more than anything, and he needs these guys to do it. So they're all in this together. They got to figure it out.
The one thing that does make me nervous is that when I think of kind of maturity and compromise, Jimmy and Tibbs don't come to mind. And so it's like everything you just said, yeah, I that's what my friends say. That's what we as fans believe. But it's like then you got these two people, and could there be anyone more stubborn than those two? And it's like, do they actually realize it? And if they do, will they do anything about it? Or are they just going to say, screw this, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing? And then it does get to the point of where some tough decisions get made.
Yeah, I think I think that's especially an issue that Tibbs has to look at, because Jimmy, if it doesn't work out here for Jimmy, he'll go somewhere else and someone will give him millions and millions of dollars because he's that good and he's that talented. And but if it doesn't work for Tibbs here, he could have a harder time rebooting for a third time to get this. And so he has to be as invested in kind of making this work. And I believe he is. Like, I think that I think he understands that this season coming in is kind of make or break, and that whatever has held them back these first 2 years has to be resolved to move forward. Now, if he stays stubborn and just really digs in and says, Cat, Wig, you have to do it my way, then it's not going to work. And then then he's going to be facing the guillotine at the end of the year. But if he can somehow find a way to reach them on a different level and say, okay, what is it that you are not understanding, or what can I do to help open your eyes to this? Then there's a chance. And look, I'm not ruling that out yet, because I do think that it is well known within the organization. I think that this year is the year that it's got to happen. And so if you're not invested now, then you got all sorts of problems.
I would not want to have my career reliant on Wiggins.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean,
that is scary.
Hey, no, you're right. That's the big question right here with all of that money that he's getting now too is, and this isn't just a Tibbs and Butler thing in terms of guys who have been frustrated by Wiggins. I mean, this goes all the way back to Kansas. This goes back to high school. These kind of questions about his motor, his desire, all of those things have followed him all the way through. And so far, nobody has really found that kind of magic pill to slip into his, wrapping peanut butter and have him eat like a dog taking his medicine. That gets him going. And so that's going to be, I would be nervous as well. I'm not as down on Wiggins as a lot of people are, but I also absolutely recognize that he has been unreliable so far, and that's a dangerous thing when you are starting a 5-year, $150 million contract.
Look how far we went into the podcast before we mentioned Andrew Wiggins. That took great self-restraint.
But it also just shows kind of all of the things that are lining up here that the Wolves have to deal with.
Absolutely. Let's get more into Wiggins and the draft and some Twitter questions. Do want to thank Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, Hoaglund. You should probably have heard Tony's name a lot on the network. He sponsors multiple shows. He's become a co-host on the Minnesota Sports Fan podcast with Nick Henry, which is a lot of fun. And he handles my insurance. He handles Michael Russo's insurance. So, we use Tony's services. We go out to dinner with Tony. We've played golf with him. This is somebody we've known and worked with for a long time now. We can vouch for Tony and his business.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all 700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
All right. Are you still bored by the draft? I am.
Well, I mean, what I would say is yes, kind of, but what were you hoping for? I mean, at 20 and 48, you weren't
Wiggins trade,
right?
Something.
I mean, yeah. Well, it's clear like through the whole draft, nobody traded players that they had because everyone's waiting for LeBron to figure out what he's going to do. So no one kind of paints themselves into a corner. So it was very quiet from a trades aspect, which was disappointing for sure. But at 20 and 48, you're not at 5 or 7. You're not at 3. And so the chances of getting a player that's either a household name or someone that you're saying, okay, here's the missing piece, probably isn't going to be there.
Don't you wonder how many fans wish we would have lost that game with Denver? I mean, I don't know what we would have ended up at. It was probably 12 or 11. The pick, and we'd be in the lottery.
13, 14. Because you're right on the edge.
I mean, we would have gotten Donovan, Mitchell again, I'm sure.
Yeah, no question.
But because I was texting with you guys, a bunch of friends. I watched the draft all through the second round because I'm clearly stupid and bored. And it was not that exciting because for 13 years, we're always, like in the top 5. But then you start trying.
No opportunity here to draft a Johnny Flynn. And that's a shame.
This is what I was going to say. Is like when you justify and you're like, man, I mean, Wes Johnson. You start then going through the whole horrifics, and you're like, holy crap! How bad can this dude from Georgia Tech? I mean, who hasn't produced a player since Kenny Anderson back in the '80s? I mean, but whatever. He's got to be better than these other yahoos. So I don't know. It was boring, but hopefully it works out.
Yeah, I mean,
when I say it's boring, I'm not ripping their decisions. I'm saying. Yeah, as sports work on different levels. There's the team building and analysis. Then there's just the gut level. We're fans and we want something to entertain us, and I just wasn't entertained. That's all.
Fans. Yeah, either you thought outside chance of a Wiggins trade, which I don't think they're not trading Wiggins this summer, as far as I can tell from the landscape out there. They're just not a deal out there that's available. I think they're gonna start training camp with him and see what happens. But I mean, fans, you go in because it's the unknown. The draft is the unknown, and who you're going to end up with, and what kind of trades are going to happen. Are you going to get rid of Gorgie and all those things? None of that stuff did transpire. But if they end up, if Okogie becomes a player that helps them, and can play 20 minutes a night, that's a win for them because they need it. I mean, it's very possible that Bates Diop is going to have to sort of be a belly light in terms of a guy who can play 3 or 4 and hit some threes, even though he's not near the shooter that Bielitsa is, but kind of can stretch the floor a little bit, defend. The potential for them to need these guys earlier than maybe people expect is really there. So that's kind of exciting. But yeah, in all, no one's run into the team store for an Okogie number 20 jersey. That's just the way that it is right now. And
it just seems like, knowing what we know of Tibbs, he won't play them. I mean, like we hear, we need to play him and all that, but it's just, you're sitting there, he should have been playing Belly and Tyus a lot more last year. I mean, you said this earlier where they were given a chance based on injury and based on, then you're like, okay, well, this is how Tibbs learns that he can trust people. He still screwed them. Mm-hmm. Belly played great. His confidence, you remember, he'd be like 3 feet behind the 3-point line and just jacking them.
Yeah.
And he's running the other way like Curry. He knew it was going in. And then as soon as Jimmy came back, his confidence back in the toilet. And it's like, why do I see it and he can't see it? So, I mean, these rookies, that's another reason not to get excited. If you're a top 5 pick, you're like, okay, well, they're going to have to play, but this Okogie guy's not playing.
He didn't play Dunn. Dunn was, a 5?
He did play Dunn. Just Dunn sucked.
Well,
Dunn didn't play well either. Yeah,
it was both.
There's a lot.
He
of
didn't
things
play well, and so
yeah.
Tibbs didn't play. It was the cannonball rolling down the hill.
Well, once you saw Dunn's shot, then you knew he was not going to play. But that's a whole other issue.
Right? No. But then you don't take him at 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody had him as Rookie of the Year, though, too. Remember, after the draft, they were like, Dunn is the one.
Was very well
it's a perfect Tibbs pick. And then, he's whatever.
Mm-hmm. And Chicago apparently is having some trouble with him right now, too. So it's kind of trickling down a little bit. Again, for people who want to just say, well, Tibbs is the issue, there are others. There are other things that factor in, but. To your larger point, that's what's going to factor in and what's going to be so interesting about free agency is